It's the Cool Kids Club. You've been invited to the Cool Kids Club. It's so exciting, yeah. Justin likes monsters, yeah. And Amy likes words in the Cool Kids Club. Cool Kids Club.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Cool Kids Club podcast, episode number 59. I am one of the cool kids, Justin.
I am the other cool kid, Amy.
Hey, cool kid, Amy.
Cool kid, Justin.
I have a question for you.
Okay.
Are you ready?
Oh. Justin, I'll tell you what I am ready for. Lots of crotch chopping.
Yeah, now, the people listening obviously can't see the crotch chopping, but there
but just know that it's happening.
It's happening right now. She's doing it right now.
But so
between the both of us, there's going to be a lot of crotch chopping in this episode.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there'll be a lot of crotch chopping.
And that is because it's summertime. And that means that...
And I always crotch chop in the summer.
I always...
I can't crotch chop any other season.
From Memorial Day to Labor Day, it's mostly
It's constant. Honestly, it's constant.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've been pulled into HR many times.
It's the season for it.
Why is it really the season for crotch chopping?
Well, we tend to talk about wrestling in the summer, and we're going to talk about wrestling again in this episode. We're going to do another two-part...
Two parts? Yes.
Retrospective, I guess. Would that be a good
I think that's a great term, yeah.
Yeah. So we did, our first year we did the golden era of the 80s, Hulk Hogan and Macho Man and Ultimate Warrior and Jake Snake and all those guys. Last year we did sort of the golden age of when you and I were kids.
Oh, definitely.
Watching wrestling, which was the much maligned, not by me though, New Generation era of the early 90s.
Obviously my favorite part.
Right?
My favorite era.
That's what I grew up on. And today, we are going to be talking about, without a doubt, the most popular era ever.
You think more popular than like Hulk Hogan era? He's in this era too. But,
yeah.
Wow.
I would say so. I mean, that would be probably the second.
Yeah, I guess I do feel like at this point, like, wrestling became...
This is the most mainstream wrestling
I was going to say,
ever
very mainstream. It's pretty mainstream now, but I guess...
but this was...
Like, it started here.
Like, I watched wrestling... You know, I maybe had a couple friends here and there who watched wrestling when we were, like, in Florida in the early, mid-'90s. By the time the late 90s roll around and the Attitude Era has started, I mean, you go to school and you see...
Yes.
Like, everyone... Like, all the boys especially, everyone's got, like, an Austin 316 shirt.
And they're all crotch
DX
chopping.
shirt, or Goldberg, or NWO.
Yes.
Or, something like that. And they're all crotch chopping, and we're all getting in trouble for it.
Yes, of course.
Yeah, and telling people to suck it.
Yeah. It was a very, very, like, dirty, like, almost a Christina Aguilera dirty era.
It was the dirty era of the WWF.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, it really, I feel like the two things just go hand in hand culturally, because when I think of, especially the early years of the Attitude Era, something else came around right at the same time this was happening, which became a cultural phenomenon, and I feel like Attitude Era WWF goes hand in hand with this, and that's South Park.
Oh, yes.
Like those first several years of South Park.
Oh, Jesus. It really has been on that long, hasn't it?
Yeah, 1997, which is pretty much the beginning of the Attitude Era, like same year.
These are the boys that I was growing up with. These are the options I had. This was little boys who were obsessed with the Attitude Era of wrestling and South Park. It was not a mature time.
No, no. I can't argue that. You've got Cartman. Oh my God! Like when I go back and watch like 1997, 98, 99 wrestling, The amount of, people bring signs in the audience.
Oh,
and hold
yeah,
up. The amount of like Cartmans and oh my god, they killed Kenny jokes.
Oh,
It's like Cartman in a 316 shirt.
wow.
Cartman 316.
A lot of crossover there. Yeah.
I feel like there is, and
Like,
this was
12-year-old
like,
boys were thriving at this time.
I was the perfect age.
Yes, you were.
For this, and I
Yes.
feel like with WWF in particular, and the kind of golden era of, well, not the golden era, but this high point of wrestling in the 90s. I was like I was aging perfectly along with it. It felt like when in like the early years, when I was a little kid, it was much more cartoony. Hulk Hogan and Ultimate Warrior and Ted DiBiase and all those larger than life big cartoon character guys. Then you had those kind of awkward middle years, and then I was like perfect age by the time when the Attitude Era started up. I was
because you started high school in what year?
99.
Oh, so you were like middle school. Oh God, Jesus.
Yeah, I was
prime
like
age,
7th, 8th grade.
Oh yeah.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and it
Yeah,
was
you
getting
were.
more and more awkward to watch with my parents, which is one of the reasons that I eventually quit watching wrestling for a long time.
Really?
That was initially one of the things that got me out of it was how obviously I was a kid. I was still living at home, and it's getting really edgy and really
Very edgy
out there, and stuff that you're not super comfortable when your mom walks in the room and sees,
Yeah, exactly.
So it just became easier eventually just not to watch it.
Oh, I didn't really know that was why you stopped.
Well, it was one of the reasons. Yeah, I mean, I think I just kind of aged out of it at a point, but and then regressed back into it as I've gotten older and as I've done in general.
Yeah,
with life.
Well, that's the whole podcast. Regression, the podcast.
Right.
It's the whole thing.
So
I don't want to grow up.
So
well,
I
tell
guess,
us, update us on like where did we leave off last summer?
Yeah, so obviously
when we ended the New Generation era.
Yeah, obviously, I encourage you to go back and listen to our two-part episode on the New Generation era, as we're not going to get too far into it. But basically, you had all the drama in the early 90s with the steroid trial. Business had been down. You had WCW at the beginning of the Monday Night War with WCW launching Nitro at the same time as Monday Night Raw. So you had these two companies and their flagship show. And New Generation era is just like business is down. Popularity is at a low point. This is, though, the heyday of guys like Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon.
Some of our faves.
Yeah. And then it kind of changes in 96 when Kevin Nash, a.k.a. Diesel, and Scott Hall,
Big
a.k.a.
Daddy Diesel,
Razor
you
Ramon.
mean?
Big Daddy Cool. Big D.
Oh. He had Big D energy.
Big time.
Yeah.
Big time, Big D.
There's no way that man has a little D. Let's just...
No.
He is too large of a man. It's just... There's no way.
You know Kevin Nash back in heat.
Yeah.
So,
anyway.
if you recall, Nash and Hall jumped ship to WCW, the main competitor. Over there, they have the formation of the New World Order, the NWO, with Hulk Hogan, and they have basically are dominating WWF, who used to be number one.
Yes.
And now they're number two.
Yeah.
Essentially. So you have this... the Attitude Era, I think, is a direct response to the success that WCW was having. Like, WCW had at the time, like in these, like in like 90, 95, 96, arguably 97, WCW was just better. Like, I have a lot of nostalgia for the WWF product in those years, but like WCW was just putting on a better show.
They were always edgier. They were always a little rougher around the edges.
It was yes. They had.
It was meant to be like the antithesis, kind of WWF, where you had fucking Doink the Clown.
Well, yeah, and it was sort of the successor at that time to the old Southern
Yes, the old
wrestling
Southern.
shows, as opposed to like the flashier.
You mean wrestling as opposed to wrestling?
Wrestling is the Southern style.
That's-
Wrestling would be like, WWF style.
That's what the New Englanders do.
Right. Wrestling's the Southern style.
Wrestling, that's what we do. Ain't no rules, just right, like an Outback.
Right.
Yeah.
Just right with a W.
That's correct. Yeah. Break somebody's neck? Oh well. You know.
Yeah.
Speaking of broken necks. Yeah.
I was just going to say, speaking of broken necks. And I was going to have
Stone
a
Cold
sidebar.
Steve Austin.
Stone Cold Steve Austin. Breaks his neck, SummerSlam 1997. He is like on his way up. He is like, the fans really getting behind him. Mm-hmm. I talked about it last year in the New Generation episode. 1997 is probably my favorite year of wrestling ever.
It's probably my favorite year.
I think.
Full stop.
Maybe. I think it's the best year WWF ever did, or at least one of them. I think that it's the best year WCW ever did. I really love 1997 wrestling. Like, this is when it was fired on all cylinders for me. And it's also kind of the ramp up to the Attitude Era.
Yeah.
So it's sort of like 1997 is really a year of transition, and it's hard to define where one era ends and where the next one begins.
Because there's definitely a transition period.
Yeah, like I've heard people argue that like, oh well, the Attitude Era started at King of the Ring 1996 when Stone Cold Steve Austin said Austin 316 for the first time. I don't agree with that because that's too early. But you know, by November of 97, you kind of everything is sort of in place at this point. The Montreal Screwjob, which we're not going to go into because we talked a lot about it last episode. Bret Hart is out of the company. The top number one guy is out. Shawn Michaels, who is in on the Montreal Screwjob, he's the champion.
He's technically the champion, but
he's working very hurt.
Yeah.
At this point, you have a lot of like the Undertaker and Kane storyline has started up.
Right.
Like the Rocky Maivia has become The Rock and we've started to see the beginnings of the Rock character. We have the three faces.
You can begin to smell. You sniff a little. You can begin to smell a little bit of what he's cooking.
There's like something's on the wind.
You're like, what was that?
Was he cooking something?
Is somebody cooking something? That's around this.
And you don't even know it's The Rock yet.
No, you don't know what it is. You don't know it's The Rock. You just know
somewhere
somebody's cooking something.
Yeah. So basically, by the end of the 1997, all of this is in place, right? You've got all of the things we just mentioned, the three faces of Foley. All of this kind of stuff, and in December of 1997, and I said it's kind of hard to define when one era ends and the other begins.
But I'm going to define it.
But
Next November 1997.
But the easiest way to do it is December 15th, 1997, when Vince McMahon
at 6 p.m. at 8 minutes,
probably 8:30 or 9 o'clock p.m. I imagine on Raw.
There's no way to determine, but I am going to say it is December 15th, 1997 at 8:30 p.m.
Well, that is when they start. Like, so that's when he cuts this promo. There's a taped segment, and you should just watch it real quick because it's like a minute long, in which he essentially is speaking out of character. It's actually
he being Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon.
Okay.
Where he essentially says, "We are very deliberately making a change to our creative. We are going to be pushing the envelope. We are going to be getting edgier. All of this really in a bid to compete with WCW."
We in the WWF think that you, the audience, are quite frankly tired of having your intelligence insulted. We also think that you're tired of the same old simplistic theory of good guys versus bad guys. Surely the era of the superhero who urge you to say your prayers and take your vitamins is definitely passé. Therefore, we've embarked upon a far more innovative and contemporary creative campaign that is far more invigorating and extemporaneous than ever before. However, due to the live nature of Raw and the War Zone, we encourage some degree of parental discretion as relates to the younger audience allowed to stay up late.
Yeah, so I mean, that is a pretty official
Right. Seems like it.
distinction.
Right.
I mean, he's basically like,
What we're doing's not working. What we've been doing's not working.
exactly. We're gonna be edgier. Now we need parental discretion.
Right.
I mean, he pretty much just says that.
Yeah, so in November of 97 is when they really start using the slogan attitude.
Okay.
And I remember they had these commercials that were really cool, and it was like all the wrestlers like kind of talking about their like real life accolades and injuries they've had, and then it's kind of like you think I'm not a real athlete, you think this isn't real, try lacing my boots, and then it was attitude
boy.
at the end.
Oh boy.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And oh yeah. So around this time, the Attitude Era can be attributed to creatively to many people, but the particular creative minds behind it are the Vinces, of course, Vince McMahon,
Sure.
and Vince Russo.
Okay.
Vince
Who's
Russo is a
Vince Russo?
guy. Vince Russo is a guy who has worked for the company for several years at this point as a writer.
Okay.
He was involved with WWF magazine, I think, when they first came in. He's had some different like roles on a few B&C shows here and there. He's a writer, but by December of 97, he has been promoted to head writer.
Oh, okay.
And him and his partner Ed Ferrara are kind of the creative team behind a lot of the craziness that was the Attitude Era, like the wild shit that they were getting ready to start doing.
Yeah.
And they called it Crash TV was the term that Vince Russo used. And Crash TV means not as much of a focus on like matches.
Like actual wrestling?
Like the actual in-ring product was often kind of secondary. The shows were really fast-paced. Obviously, we're getting much edgier. We're getting more violent. A lot more sexual content.
Oh, yeah. That's what I remember. Yeah.
Female characters like particularly Sable and Sunny and Marlena in the early years here. You know, a lot of skin, a lot of, flipping the bird and pointing at your dick. And crotch chopping, of course, goes without saying. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, then you had a lot of controversial characters, and so you have a lot of like television watchdog groups and stuff get very
I imagine
get all over them about some
I imagine
of this
the
shit.
Christian moms or whatever were very upset.
Oh, they did not like this at all.
They did not like this
at all. You have Stone Cold Steve Austin, who's drinking beer and flipping the bird and cursing and
just
all of
generally
that.
Not giving a fuck.
And you have DX doing like basically essentially what DX is like a frat boy gimmick.
Okay.
Right? So it's just
DX.
Degeneration X?
Oh, you meant I was thinking it was a just one person. I see.
Oh, so Degeneration X
yes,
starts as Shawn Michaels, Hunter Hearst Helmsley. This is when he first becomes Triple H.
Yes.
And China, along with the insurance policy Rick Rude, starts in 1997. But once we so going into 98, like the Attitude Era is full effect now, right? So we're kicking things off. We've got the champion Shawn Michaels, who is already very hurt. Bret Hart is out of the company, so essentially your two guys now are Shawn Michaels, who is very hurt, and Stone Cold Steve Austin, who
is also very
back, but broke his neck the previous August at SummerSlam.
Shoo.
So at the 1998 Royal Rumble, two major things happen. Two major things. Stone Cold Steve Austin wins again, so that means that he is going to the main event of WrestleMania to fight for the championship. And as a in the final match of Shawn Michaels' feud with the Undertaker, who was transitioning obviously to a feud with Kane at this point, like his whole brother storyline, which we'll talk about in a minute.
Yes.
They have a casket match, and a couple minutes into the match,
aren't all Undertaker matches casket matches?
yeah. I mean,
You could argue
there
that.
was a time, like in early Undertaker, like in the early 90s, there was a time period where he would bring a body bag to the ring.
Oh my God.
And actually, I think Paul Bearer would bring it, and then he would destroy some no-name guy, and then Paul Bearer would come and lay out the body bag, and they would zip him up in the body bag, and he would put him over his shoulder.
That's a great gimmick.
And carry him off. Right? He's like, okay, I murdered him.
Can you do a Paul Bearer real quick for us?
Oh yes, Undertaker. It probably won't be the last Paul Bearer I do in this episode because
It's never going to be the last.
Oh yes.
Yeah, we got to have more impressions because the people love your wrestling impressions.
They do? Yeah, okay.
They do. Katie does.
Katie
is a loyal listener.
Yeah, okay. Well, we don't really have... I got, the Vince McMahon, your...
Yeah.
Stone Cold, this kind of growly thing.
It's very growly. Yeah. Well, so what else happened? So we've got...
in this match...
Royal Rumbles in a row.
Two Royal Rumbles in a row.
Two.
And in the championship match... early in the match, so they have this casket outside the ring, and the goal is you put your opponent in the casket closely.
Yeah.
Shawn Michaels goes over the top and is supposed to land on the casket, but overshoots it and clips the back of his back, like his lower back, which he was already having some very serious problems with.
Yeah,
and he fractures 2 discs in it. He fucks his back up really bad.
Oh man,
really, really bad. To the point where this is pretty much the end of his career for several years.
God. Yeah.
Between the Royal Rumble and WrestleMania, he doesn't wrestle at all. WrestleMania 14, which we're building up to in the spring of '98, is obviously it's going to be Stone Cold versus Shawn Michaels. And it's going to be Shawn Michaels' last match for 4 years because he is going to retire from this injury. And you can tell watching that match, he is in pain. He is in a lot of real pain in that match. Like, he's just trying to get through
sucks.
it. Yeah.
That sucks. It sucks they would even make him do that.
Yeah. So this match, of course, is probably most famous for the involvement of Mike Tyson, which is...
oh, yeah.
So,
I remember him getting involved.
Mike Tyson is obviously a huge in the world of sports in 1998, one of the biggest possible.
Now, had he
in the
already bitten
yes.
Evander Holyfield's ear off? Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
I couldn't remember when that happened.
Yeah.
So he's on the loose.
So he's on the loose. They bring him in, and this gets them a ton of. This is the first time they're getting like kind of mainstream attention. Because Mike Tyson is that mainstream.
Yeah.
And so, like, there's a lot of eyes on the product all of a sudden of, like, Mike Tyson is doing stuff on Monday Night Raw, and you get, of course, a couple, like, you get the great legendary segment where Vince McMahon brings Tyson and his whole entourage, and then Stone Cold Steve Austin, who is, just... Stone Cold's your everyman, right? That's the appeal of Stone Cold Steve Austin, especially in his initial rise here. Is he's like the working man. Who has an asshole for a boss that you just have to like grin through and just be like, and you just want to punch him in the mouth. And Stone Cold is like a beer swilling redneck and who punches his boss in the mouth.
Yeah.
So he's
everything we want to be.
He is everything we want to be. He don't give a fuck.
No, he does not.
Well, and plus it's such a different time because, I mean, they were, we
can't punch bosses.
The white meat baby face, you can on wrestling. The sort of white meat baby face good guy hero was kind of out of fashion at this point.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, what happened with Stone Cold's popularity was very, very organic. And I think was just a sign of the times, So you get this, of course, Austin comes out and flips off Mike Tyson, and it ends in a big brawl.
Of course.
In a big brawl, and then Mike Tyson ends up joining DX
Oh God, yeah.
on the build up to WrestleMania, and then WrestleMania 14 in spring of '98 is kind of the coronation of Stone Cold Steve Austin. So he's like, this is his big moment. He's the number one guy right now.
Okay.
Because it's like Brett's gone, Shawn is probably gone, and he ends up actually being gone for quite a while.
Yeah.
We're going with you. Like that. This is kind of like it's you. And so Stone Cold becomes champion. Mike Tyson doesn't screw over Stone Cold and ends up knocking Shawn Michaels out after the match and celebrating with a beer in the ring. You know.
Oh boy. Just a couple of bros having a beer.
Just a couple of bros pounding a couple Steve Weisers.
Jesus.
So
this is a very juvenile era.
Oh yeah.
Very much so.
Again, I'm like 12, 13.
Yeah,
Perfect.
You're loving it.
Perfect. I'm loving it. And you know what else I'm loving as a self-professed monster kid? You know,
yes.
I was always into horror, as we've discussed many times.
And you were also a monster, so.
And I was a monster,
of course,
literally and figuratively. And I'm loving. I talked about it probably last summer during the New Generation episode about how I love stupid supernatural gaga bullshit in wrestling. Like, not all the time, obviously. Like, it has but I love when we just kind of commit to something and it's like, this is so out there and stupid, but let's just see how far we can go. It's just getting ridiculous.
Yep.
And that's exactly what we're doing. And the Undertaker was the king of it. Right?
Oh,
because
100%,
I'm pretty sure I probably talked about it last summer in the New Generation episode of how I loved him dying in the coffin and him being up on the screen.
I love that.
And ascending to the rafters.
That was amazing.
I love shit like that. It's corny and stupid.
It's so corny.
Yeah.
But I love it.
And so now think of the direction that the creative is headed, right? This juvenile direction you're talking about, this crotch chopping and beer drinking and middle finger flipping.
Yes.
And now think of, what are we going to do with the spooky shit? Well, let me tell you what we're going to do with the spooky shit.
Oh, boy.
After the match where... So Kane...
Yeah.
I sounded very excited right then. I was like, oh, okay, let me tell you about Kane.
I mean, it's because you are. Let's be real.
I am excited. Excited, yeah.
Right.
Kane debuts in the first ever Hell in a Cell match at Bad Blood in October of '97.
That was the first Hell in the Cell?
Yes.
Oh, gosh.
That's gotta be Kane! There you go, there's a Vince McMahon impression.
There was a good one.
That's gotta be him!
Oh, boy, that was
Kane.
very organic. That was very good.
Okay, good. Kane never talks. He does talk later when he's got a little voice changey thing he holds up to his throat and he's like, he's like, suck it.
Like Ghostface?
Well, it's kind of like, I think the gimmick is supposed to be his voice got damaged because he's supposed to have been burned in the fire. There's this whole lore.
That's right. There's a whole backstory.
There's a whole backstory about Paul Bearer being Kane's real father, and Kane burning down the funeral home that they lived in as a kid because his parents ran a funeral home and killed their parents. And Undertaker presumed for all these years that Kane had died also. And then when him and Paul Bearer split, Paul Bearer brings in Kane, who he has secretly been,
training to be a wrestler,
Quasimodoing in his home, like just making him eat, SpaghettiOs and train to be a wrestler.
Listen, ain't nobody made anybody eat SpaghettiOs. They're delicious.
So
don't gotta make me eat SpaghettiOs.
So we
don't threaten me with a good time.
Oh yes. So we finally see Kane in the fall, and then basically the storyline for a couple months is that Kane is trying to get the Undertaker to fight him, and Undertaker's like, "I'm not gonna fight you. I'm not gonna fight my brother."
Yeah.
And basically Kane trying to goad him into it.
Yeah.
And going around just destroying everybody, trying to goad him into a fight. And then we get to the Royal Rumble. So after Shawn Michaels wins despite his literal broken back.
Oh my God.
We get Kane and Paul Bearer. What are they going to do with the spooky storyline, you may ask? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to first put Undertaker in the casket.
Sure.
We're going to take an axe and
oh my God.
We're going to smash a big hole, like Jack Torrance style, in the lid, the closed lid of the casket. We are going to pour gasoline into the hole.
Uh-oh.
And all over the top. And then we're going to light that bitch on fire. And so...
Live. Right then and there.
Live. Kane seemingly burns The Undertaker alive at the end of the Royal Rumble. And actually, this is... I really can't figure out... And this is one thing...
how did they do that?
I really don't know how they did it. And Bruce Pritchard on his podcast has been asked that many times, and that's one of the things that he's always like, just let me have that one, like, because I really don't know how they did it.
Okay, I gotta watch this.
Like, I don't know how they didn't actually burn him alive.
The casket is on fire! The Undertaker is in the casket!
It's a good stunt.
You know what I think happened is he actually killed the Undertaker.
I mean,
all this is real.
That does seem to be the most logical explanation.
That's the one.
This is real.
Sense.
He does really burn him, especially when the Undertaker returns from the dead. After being basically, this writes the Undertaker off for like 2 months.
Well, he's dead, Justin.
He's dead.
He's literally dead.
He's not dead. Then we get into all this bollocks of him, like I think when he comes back, there's like a coffin appears or casket appears on the stage, and a lightning bolt hits it, and it explodes, and he's standing inside.
That's badass.
It's super badass. Like stuff like lighting effigies on fire, and it gets wild, man. It gets wild. I love all this bullshit. So they have their big match at WrestleMania, of course, because it's an Undertaker match at WrestleMania. Undertaker wins. No surprise there.
Of course.
And this is the beginning of the Kane Undertaker real life and storyline relationship, as they would kind of be intertwined with each other for.
Do they like team up at a point, or
at many points? Yes,
okay.
At many points, including very soon.
Oh, okay.
And I love that about wrestling. I love that, like, okay, in January he literally burns the Undertaker alive, attempts to murder him in one of the most horrific ways you can murder somebody, I imagine. And by the summer, they're like, I just really hate Vince, and I know you hate Vince. Let's be buddies.
Yeah.
That's wrestling, man. You just get over it.
Yep.
Well, that's a wrestling.
That's baseball.
That's baseball, baby. So post WrestleMania, obviously Stone Cold is your big star. DX. What happens to DX now that
what does happen?
Shawn Michaels is out. So up to this point, DX
so it's
is
just
Shawn Michaels,
Triple H, and who?
At this point, the night after WrestleMania, Triple H and Chyna, who are the only two members of DX left, as Shawn Michaels is going to be retiring. Although he will return as an on-screen character, just not wrestling. Basically, at this point, we get DX 2.0, which lasts for a lot longer than the initial version. The OG with Shawn Michaels. Now, that's my preferred D-Generation X, is the OG with Shawn Michaels. And especially in late 97, when you still had Ravishing Rick Rude as the insurance policy, walking around being a badass in a suit.
I gotcha.
But the night after WrestleMania, Triple H comes out, basically says, I'm the new leader of DX.
Oh, okay.
And he brings out the New Age Outlaws, the Road Dogg Jesse James, and the badass Billy Gunn.
Oh, God, yeah.
Who had already kind of had some storyline interactions and all of that, and brings them and announces that they are joining D-Generation X. Oh, you didn't know, Amy?
Oh, I did not.
Your ass better call somebody!
This is the most ridiculous era.
And
this one does not have Doink the Clown. Once again.
This is the Doinkless era.
This is Doinkless.
These are the Doinkless years.
Still the most ridiculous era.
And then he brings out a guy who had performed for many years in the WWF as the 1-2-3 Kid.
Oh, yeah.
And who then had left.
Who we met.
Who we met when we were kids, yes.
Yeah.
Who left for WCW in 1996 and was in the NWO.
That's right. I
And
remember
is
that.
now making his surprise return to the company. You get X-Pac. So he is... now we have DX 2.0. We got the Outlaws and DX and Triple H and China. So this is your crew. This is the era where we get like the famous DX invasion of Nitro, where they did this like joking segment. So essentially you had because Nitro and WCW Nitro and Monday Night Raw were running the same night at the same time.
Yes.
Their schedules happened to, I think it was in Virginia Beach, where they were like literally like 30 minutes up the road from each other the same night, which like never happened. Mm-hmm. And so DX they take a bunch of cameras and they do this like fake invasion over at the building where they're doing the WCW show, like trying to get into the building, and they take a Jeep over there like it's a tank and put their helmets on, and they go over there and, you know, rile up the fans outside and get them chanting DX and suck it, and it's just this famous skit that gets replayed ad nauseum when you're talking about DX. So this is kind of the era of that.
Okay.
And like in the undercard is where you get a lot of the really controversial stuff. I mean, obviously you've got DX, but like this is the era of Val Venus, the porn star character.
Val Venus?
Val
I
Venus.
don't know about Val Venus.
Here's a wrestling impression for you. This is my Val Venus impression. Hello, ladies.
Oh, God.
And he would come out in a towel, and he would do a little, you know, little, and then he would cut like a really like overtly sexual joke or something at the beginning, you know.
I gotta Google this guy.
Oh, you don't remember old Val?
No.
You don't remember?
I was not watching at this point.
You don't remember the Big Valboski?
I do not. Oh my lord. Val Venus. What a name.
Val Venus. Now this, you want to know, like, what are the most Vince Russo... What's the most Vince Russo-y shit that goes down in the Attitude Era? Val Venus is one of them. That's his brainchild. As is the Godfather, who had wrestled under several gimmicks over the years, but this is his most famous one as a pimp.
Now I remember Goldust.
Now Goldust was a freak. Goldust was Goldust was edgy before the Attitude Era. Like, Goldust was doing really edgy shit for, like, 95, 96, 97. By the time the Attitude Era rolls around, he's doing some weird shit.
He's just a freak. He's a freak on a leash.
He's a freak, often literally on a leash.
Yeah.
With
God.
Luna Vachon at the other end.
And this is Dustin Rhodes. This is Dusty Rhodes' son.
Yes, correct.
And we talked about that
older
last
brother
time.
of Cody Rhodes.
Yes, okay.
Yeah,
so he's just a freak. Yeah. That's his whole gimmick.
He is. So a lot of, I feel like we look through rose-colored glasses at this. Wrestling fans do, as like, oh, the Attitude Era was so awesome, and it had a lot of great stuff in it, and it had stuff that does hold up. Like in 98. This is when you really get the big storyline that takes the company to new heights is Stone Cold versus Mr. McMahon. And the Mr. McMahon character, obviously Vince McMahon has owned the company for years at this point and has been an on-screen character for years at this point. It's really after the Montreal Screwjob, and because of the internet, so many fans were now sort of privy to more of the goings-on behind the scenes, and you had like these online, newsletters and sites and forums. So it was just sort of natural. The fans really couldn't stand McMahon, and he was positioned perfectly as the bad guy coming out of the Montreal Screwjob. So it was just sort of this natural thing of like McMahon becoming
a bad guy, like an actual
the big tyrannical boss, and Stone Cold being working class hero.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah.
But you also have a lot of
Toby Keith of wrestling.
Right. Yes. So yeah, in the summer you have again Undertaker and Kane kind of alternate between being friends and trying to murder each other.
Who doesn't? You know,
Kane wins the world title for one day over the summer briefly. You get Mick Foley's doing the faces of Foley, and so
he's a pretend freak.
The summer of 1998 has one of the most legendary events ever in the company in it, and one of the worst things they ever did. Which one do you want to hear about first?
The first one.
The legendary thing?
Yeah, the legend. Are they the same thing?
No, they're not the same thing.
Okay, I want to hear about the legendary first.
All right. Well, King of the Ring 1998 is maybe one of the most famous wrestling matches of all time, if not the most famous wrestling match of all time.
And why is that?
Well, it's even a meme nowadays. I can't escape it on the internet. It's Undertaker versus Mankind Hell in a Cell. The King of the Ring 1998. This is where the Undertaker throws the Mankind off the top of Hell in a Cell.
Ooh.
And well, I mean, if you haven't seen it, you should probably watch it. And it is one of the most brutal things I've ever seen in a wrestling match.
Did he actually really hurt him?
It didn't feel good. I imagine he also got choke slammed through the cell into the ring, which is probably actually a worse fall. We're doing a lot of these crazy stunts here in '98, and there's going to be a reason why some of these stop. This is sort of the match where I think Vince McMahon was like, okay, that's too far. Like,
yeah,
you know,
we're gonna kill somebody. Yeah,
yeah. So it's one of the most famous matches ever. It's still, we actually just had the 25th anniversary of it the other day. And it was all over. And I know I probably, lurk in some different corners of the internet, but even like that's the sort of thing like even non-wrestling sites are posting about. Like,
interesting.
Just one of the most famous moments of all time. And then you have a little experiment. So one of the best parts about the Attitude Era, as opposed to some more recent years, though not the most recent years, was there were stories for everybody. Like, even if you're at the top of the card with Vince McMahon, Stone Cold, if you're in the mid card with whoever, with Val Venus and D'Lo Brown or whoever, or if you're at the bottom of the card doing shit, everyone has a story, even if it's something little. And so this was a lot of like people just coming up with ideas and trying shit.
Yeah.
Some of it worked, and some of it really didn't. One of the ones that didn't ended up being one of the worst things WWF ever did, and it's called Brawl for All. And
okay.
So here's what Brawl for All is. So wrestling, in wrestling parlance, wrestling is a work, right? It's not real. As opposed to a shoot, which would be real.
Okay.
Right? So like UFC, that's a shoot. They're really fighting.
Okay.
Brawl for All is a shoot fighting tournament.
Oh God.
That is a brand new invention created by Vince Russo. That is a combination of shoot fighting, like UFC mixed martial arts type of thing, wrestling, and boxing.
Oh God.
And there are timed rounds. And the idea was participation is totally voluntary. No one's forced to do this.
Because you will be murdered.
You will get hurt. And guess what? A whole bunch of people really got hurt.
Oh, Jesus.
You had the the tough guys on the roster, like the real tough guys.
Yeah.
And initially this was created as a way of bringing in Dr. Death Steve Williams, who Jim Ross had been trying to bring in for years, who was like one of these real life tough guys, and he got knocked out in the first round.
Oh shit.
Because it's shoot fighting. Also, doing shoot fighting on a wrestling program is what you're saying, well, all this other shit you're seeing is like, I know it's fake, but this is real. Like, I know it's fake, but you don't have to tell me it's fake.
But it's like, exactly.
You don't have to bring attention to it. Like, you're saying everything else is stupid and fake, but this is real.
Yeah, that is weird.
This is so boring. Wrestling fans hate it. UFC fans hate it. Boxing fans hate it. It's like the worst of all of the above combined into one thing. guess what? A bunch of guys got really actually hurt in it, and were
I'm shocked.
and were out for a long time. Bart Gunn, who is essentially
that?
a nobody.
Yeah.
He was in a tag team. He was Billy Gunn's old tag team partner in the Smoking Guns.
Okay.
So Bart Gunn, who is a former tag team guy who's not really doing much of anything. He's like a real lower card guy.
Yeah.
Wins the tournament. So
okay.
So I feel like, okay, at least through this shit, you have this unexpected guy who comes up out of nowhere and wins it.
Yeah.
Why don't let's do something big with him.
Promote him, yeah.
Let's do something big with him.
Let me guess,
they don't
Yeah.
They don't do anything with him. There is a side note a couple months down the road that I'll mention as to how the saga of Bart Gunn ends. The winner of the Brawl for All. This goes on June through August of '98, and it's terrible. Oh, it's just
very
bad.
Boring.
In more entertaining developments over the summer, you get the beginnings of the Corporation, which I love. I love a good stable. I love a good stable of people just banded together. Love it. And the Corporation's a good one because by the summer of '98, you've got Shane McMahon, Vince McMahon's real life son, appearing on TV regularly as a character.
Okay.
And you have they become known as the Stooges, which are Gerald Briscoe, Pat Patterson, two old school wrestlers who are in Vince's like inner circle, like and,
in real life,
and become like they're old guys, and they become kind of like the comedy, like Keystone Cops, sort of bumbling.
Oh, that's funny.
Like bumbling goons. So,
yeah,
like they're the Bebop and Rocksteady of the Corporation.
Oh, there you go.
If Vince is Shredder, then they're the Bebop and Rocksteady.
Oh, perfect.
Does that make sense?
That's a great analogy. Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, also in the summer you get the launch of Sunday Night Heat because things were going so well. Sunday Night Heat ends up being an extra show that gets ordered and it airs on MTV Sunday nights.
Really?
Yeah. So that's a big deal at the time too. That launches in August. Two names we haven't talked a lot about yet. Mm-hmm. The Rock and Sock. And the Rock and Sock connection. Now, The Rock is The Rock. And the Sock
have we begun to smell what he's cooking?
So, let me tell you. You've begun to smell it by the end of '98. There's a whiff on the wind of what he's cooking. He's in this group, the Nation of Domination, which we discussed on the New Generation episode. There's a couple different iterations of it. By '98, he is by far, he's pretty much the leader. He is the most popular member of the group.
Yeah.
They are a heel group. They feud with DX over the summer. They have like kind of a really famous feud with DX over the summer.
Okay.
Again, very racy because they started getting into some racist shit. Like not racist shit, but like using race in a storyline.
Oh.
Which was racy. So you get some of that. But by the fall, like the Nation of Domination has pretty much disbanded at this point.
Okay.
The Rock is getting, while he's still on paper a bad guy, he's a heel. He's getting some very good guy reactions because
I was gonna say
he's The Rock.
It's so strange to think that he was a heel because he's
The Rock is an interesting story too because The Rock debuts at the end of 1996 as Rocky Maivia, and I talk about white meat babyface, smiley good guy. That's what he was, and people hated it. This was when they were wanting someone like Stone Cold.
Right.
They were chanting.
So they were like,
famously,
well, I guess he's going to be a heel.
Famously, they were chanting "Die Rocky Die" and "Rocky Sucks" at him while he was trying to be smiley babyface.
Oh.
And then he got hurt and was out for several months. And then when he came back, he turned heel, started calling himself The Rock, and that's where we got the whiff. And
that's when we get the whiff. Yeah.
All through '98, it's simmering, right? And it's building up the smell, And really, by the end of '98, here the fans they smell what he's cooking.
They do?
And they do. And they're like,
they like it.
This is our next big good guy. Like, this is our next big guy we love.
They just weren't ready for him. It was right guy, wrong time.
Yeah, and he has the Intercontinental title through a lot of the summer and into the fall, and he calls himself the People's Champion, right? And and the people love him. He's charismatic. He's The Rock. I don't have to explain The Rock to anyone, I don't think. Mick Foley, on the other hand,
The Rock to you people.
He's just The Rock. I don't owe you people anything. Mick Foley, as we've already talked about, just everybody loves Mick Foley. And after Hell in a Cell 1998, the respect for, you cannot stop people cheering him. Plus we get we've gotten to see glimpses of his comedy chops with the Dude Love character.
Oh God, it's so
his,
uncomfortable.
His Three Faces of Foley. The Mankind character, which he's doing at this point in 98, this is when we get Mr. Sacco. You have a couple of very famous segments on Raw, and a couple years ago when I went through and was watching all this, I couldn't believe how, like, every week it was something that, like, gets played in the highlight reels. It was like every week there was something that was just, like, legendary status.
Jeez.
And so you get this storyline with Vince in the hospital, and the Undertaker and Kane break his ankle, and so he's in the hospital with a broken ankle. No.
Oh, okay.
And Mick Foley shows up with a dirty sock that he has painted a face on, that he's calling Mr. Sacco, and he brought a clown with him, and he's doing this, like, funny and driving.
Was it Doink?
It was not Doink. No. I would have mentioned it if it was Doink.
I was gonna say. Well, this is the Doinkless years.
And then you also have a wonderful segment where Stone Cold attacks Vince in the hospital, and where he's like got the surgical mask on, and he's like, because he's in disguise.
Oh God!
And the nurse is like, "What do you think about this, doctor?" And you just hear him like, "Yeah, nurse, I think I'll take it from here." And they just turns around, starts beating the crap out of him, and he cracks him in the head with the bedpan, and it's funny.
Oh
and,
God!
Like Vince's, gowns riding up in his underwear showing, and it's classic.
It's just classic.
Classic stuff.
Oh God!
So all of this kind of, The Rock is being built up, on the Ascension. Mick Foley's obviously on the Ascension. This leads to Survivor Series 98. We've had this storyline going on where the World Championship, basically Vince has been trying to screw Stone Cold out of it, has kind of succeeded in doing that for the moment of the title. And going into 98, Survivor Series 98 is called Deadly Games, and it's basically a tournament to crown a new champion.
These deadly games we play.
Oh no, I don't want to land on tax. So we do a wonderful little execution of a double turn here. So you have Mankind is playing this wonderful character at this point that's kind of not... He's a heel because he's gullible and being taken advantage of.
Not because he's, like, cruel or evil.
Right. Like, he's obviously a fan favorite, and he's the baby... or people love him. Mm-hmm. But also people love The Rock, and so the tournament ends up, of course, with the two of them in the finals, with Mankind as Mr. McMahon's chosen, because he doesn't want the people's champion. He wants my chosen guy. And then we execute a double turn in the main event. Right as The Rock is beginning to be like the number 2 babyface on the show after Stone Cold. We switch it up and we turn him heel.
Oh.
And The Rock beats the shit out of Mick Foley.
No.
Who is now, of course, uber over babyface.
Yeah.
And The Rock turns heel, becomes the corporate champion, and now Vince McMahon has his corporate champion to go up against the working man. Because Mick Foley was Vince McMahon was only ever using Mick Foley.
Of course he was.
Yeah.
So really they were trying to set up
title,
Stone Cold versus The Rock.
Yeah, Stone Cold versus The Rock is where we're going for WrestleMania. So by this point, the corporation's like a fully formed faction, right? You've got Vince and Shane. You've got The Rock as the corporate champion. Patterson and Briscoe and Sergeant Slaughter are like kind of the stooge
Bebop and
guys.
Rocksteady and back
Bebop
there.
and Rocksteady. You get the Big Boss Man who comes back. Remember Big Boss Man from back in the day, Cobb County, Georgia. He's back. Lost like a bunch of weight, and he's all slim and lean, and he wears like a black SWAT team outfit. Oh, he's awesome.
He's been promoted.
Yeah, and so he's like the muscle dude. Ken Shamrock is in the corporation, and they're feuding.
It's his whole gimmick just that he's Irish.
Ken Shamrock's a famous UFC fighter. He's the first guy that really made a transition from UFC to wrestling.
Oh, I thought it was just like a Sheamus situation where it's like, what's his gimmick? He's Irish.
No, but I mean, hey, I could see it's wrestling. I could see why you went there.
I mean, yeah.
So yeah, the corporation. This is like your big bad guys now on the show, And then you have your good guys, your big good guys, which are Stone Cold, Mick Foley, Mankind, and DX are good guys at this point.
Really?
Yeah. Oh yeah, DX became good guys not long after WrestleMania. Like, yeah, people love DX.
Ugh, so obnoxious.
Yeah, but people were obnoxious.
Yes, that is true.
So you get the this really great series of matches between The Rock and Mick Foley, which for like 3 months, they kind of trade the belt back and forth.
Okay.
The best one is Raw, January 4th, 1999, and this is a big famous date in wrestling history. Okay. January 4th, 1999, because you had a lot of big stuff happen on both shows that night. So at this point, Monday Night Raw, WWF show, was only live, I want to say, every other week.
Okay.
And every other week it was taped.
Okay.
To save costs.
Yeah.
And on this show, in the main event, Mick Foley wins the world title from The Rock. And it's this big, amazing moment where the real people's champion, the man of the people, the guy who is,
was this live or taped?
This was taped.
Okay.
WCW over on the other show is teasing Kevin Nash and promoting Kevin Nash and Hulk Hogan as the NWO has split and all of this. So it's this whole big thing. You have it's called the Finger Poke of Doom. And what happens on WCW is that people were really tired of the NWO at this point. And were wanting something new. And you have this this main event that's built up. It's going to be Nash and Hogan, the two leaders of the NWO, like going at it like first time. And we're starting this new big thing. The match, the bell rings, they're face to face. Hulk Hogan pokes him in the chest with his finger, and Kevin Nash falls down and lets Hogan pin him, and they're reunited, and the NWO's back.
That's weird.
People hated it.
Yeah.
Because it sucked. Meanwhile...
very anticlimactic.
Yeah. Meanwhile, on the other channel, it was taped, but Mick Foley was going to win the world title. Because Nitro was live, this is very famous. Tony Schiavone, who is one of the announcers for WCW Nitro, at the order of Eric Bischoff, goes live on the air and says, essentially, Mick Foley's going to win the world title over on the other show, so don't bother changing the channel. He used to wrestle here years ago when he was called Cactus Jack, and says, ooh, that'll put a lot of butts in the seats. And then, very famously, as WWF likes to always point out, hundreds of thousands of people then switched the channel to watch Mick Foley win the world title for the first time in one of the best moments ever in the history of Raw.
That's hilarious.
One of the loudest pops ever when Stone Cold's music hits at the end and he comes out to help Mick Foley. It's a great moment, and it's also sort of something that people point to, pun intended, get it, finger poke. As the beginning of the end of WCW. So So I should pause here at the beginning of '99 and kind of like, where are we with the two companies? Because from the summer of '96, Monday Nitro beat Monday Night Raw, WWF Monday Night Raw, in the ratings for 83 consecutive weeks.
Woo!
So by that point, we're into '98.
Yeah.
For 2 years. 2 years?
2 years?
WCW has been beating them every week in the ratings. With the popularity of... They start to... The Mike Tyson stuff is really the thing that starts to swing ratings.
Yeah.
In early 98. By the spring of 98, due to a promoted or an advertised Stone Cold versus Vince McMahon match that doesn't actually end up happening, they beat WCW for the first time in 83 weeks in, I believe, April of 98.
Okay.
And then...
the tide starts changing then.
So the tide kind of is changing by the spring of 98. Though both are arguably sort of at kind of... Well, WCW's at a peak, certainly.
Yeah. Yeah.
By November of 98, I think November of 98 is when WCW beat them the last time.
Okay.
So basically, through the summer and the fall, they sort of trade back and forth. One week one wins, 1 week the other wins. And the end of 98 is when WWF pulls ahead.
Okay.
I won't go into really anything of what's going on in WCW, on the other hand, because that's another episode unto itself.
Yes.
But this is sort of the late 98, beginning of 99 is kind of generally seen as the turning point where WCW really started going downhill. And it happens very, very quickly, as we will see.
They really shot themselves in the foot.
In a lot of ways, they were the for 3 years, 2 years, 3 years, they were the biggest wrestling company in the world.
Yeah.
In 1998, they are the biggest wrestling company in the world. By 2001, they don't exist anymore.
That's wild.
Yeah. That's a crazy story unto itself. We get this back to the Mankind Rock. They have a empty arena match, halftime heat, live during the Super Bowl.
What?
Yeah, aired on USA Network. They called it halftime heat, as in Sunday Night Heat.
Yeah.
And they had a world title match in an empty arena, which is like a very old school type of match. Live on USA Network, I think.
That's
during
crazy.
the halftime of the Super Bowl, and got incredible ratings. And Mick Foley wins the world title again, and they trade the belt back and forth a couple times. Now you may be asking yourself, Justin, and you may ask me, Justin. You haven't mentioned the spooky shit in a while, and you said you like the spooky shit.
That you really haven't.
So we've talked about Stone Cold, and we've talked about Mick Foley, who's not really doing spooky shit at the moment, and you got The Rock. What's Undertaker up to? What's Undertaker doing?
I mean, he said that he rose from the dead a second time.
Yes. He wants to murder his brother. He wants to be friends with his brother. This goes back and forth for a while. In late 98, we get an Undertaker heel turn and a realignment with Paul Bearer. And Undertaker's like, I'm gonna get like again. We're edgy. So what's the edgy version of the Undertaker? Fucking satanic.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So the Undertaker starts to he kind of revamps his look a little bit, and it actually is one of my favorite Undertaker looks. Forms another stable, another big bad guy stable, the Ministry of Darkness.
That's a pretty sweet name.
Now, this is actually kind of a genius way of doing it, because Undertaker was banged up really bad and actually had to have a hip replacement surgery.
Oh, shit.
In early 99. So obviously he was going to be out for a while. So this was a way of him like still being on TV and being a character, but because he had this stable of people, he could always there were always other people that could like do the wrestling.
Do the wrestling, yeah.
So he kind of becomes the head of this like satanic cult, the Ministry of Darkness.
Yeah.
And they recruit a bunch of like kind of mid-card guys, like Bradshaw and Farouk become the acolytes, and they have like weird symbols painted on them. And Midian, or like, the pig farmer becomes Midian, and fucking King Mabel from Men on a Mission becomes Viscera. And you've got the Brood. I haven't even talked about the Brood, which is the crew of vampires that were around.
What?
Actual vampires.
Actual vampires.
Yes.
This is insane.
Gangrel, Edge, and Christian are the Brood. Edge and Christian, of course, would go on to a lot of fame as a tag team, and those are both world champions. But
really?
Yeah. So you have this storyline going on with sort of the formation of this Ministry of Darkness. They're feuding with kind of everybody. Good guys, they're feuding with Austin. They're feuding with Kane.
Sure.
Bad guys, they're feuding with the Corporation. This is the famous. They got a lot of one of the things people love to point to as one of the like signs of how god awful and terrible all this was the Undertaker crucifies Stone Cold Steve Austin on Raw.
Oh boy!
So instead of a cross, it's the big Undertaker symbol that he's tied to, like Jesus. They didn't nail him or anything, but
well, that's good. Thank God for that.
So again, Undertaker attempts to embalm Stone Cold alive. It's great shit.
Guessing that doesn't work.
Tricking Kane into being committed to a mental institution and him being bailed out by the corporation. There's just so much weird bullshit.
Does he what about Bob
on.
him?
Kind of, yeah. And then early on we start hearing Undertaker starts dropping these cryptic lines, right? Of about referencing taking commands or orders from a higher power.
Okay.
So then it kind of becomes this: who's the higher power? Who's the one pulling? If the Undertaker's not the one pulling the strings,
is it Vince?
Who is it? Well, I'm not going to tell you yet.
Oh man.
Yeah. Also during this time, early '99, through lots of shenanigans, Vince ends up winning the Rumble to keep Stone Cold out of the title picture. This ends up in a really famous steel cage match in which Austin and McMahon finally actually had a match at the February pay-per-view. St.
McMahon
Valentine's
actually wrestles?
Massacre. He's wrestled many times over the years, but this is his first like big match. Takes some absolutely insane bumps. This is the debut match of Big Show, who had wrestled for several years as the Giant in WCW. AKA Paul White.
He was he was a big part of the early 2000s. He was a big show, yeah.
Yeah, he was a big show. So he makes his debut in that steel cage match. This is also the time period where you get the famous segment where Austin drives the beer truck out to the ring and sprays the ring down with like a beer hose.
Oh, Jesus.
This is, of course, all leading to WrestleMania 15, which is one of my least favorite WrestleManias.
Okay.
But I just, I don't know. This, they're kind of losing me at this point, and things are getting a little too gaga at some points.
Well, and you're getting older, too.
Right, and so Stone Cold beats The Rock for the title, which, leads to The Rock being kicked out of the corporation and becoming a good guy again. And then you have Undertaker beating Big Boss Man in one of the worst Hell in a Cell matches ever, in which the Brood comes down at the end and literally hangs the Big Boss Man from the top of the cell and murders him. And then he shows up the next night, and it's never ever addressed how he survived that. Also, at WrestleMania that year, Triple H turns on D-Generation X to join the corporation. So now we've got corporate Triple H.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is kind of where we're at in the spring.
It's just a mess. It sounds like it's a mess.
There's a lot of moving parts, and this is just the main event stuff I'm talking about, man.
Right. You've
got like a hardcore division at this point where Mick Foley and Vince McMahon introduced the hardcore title, and that gets really fun. Where they introduce like the 24/7 rule, where like if you have the hardcore title, you have to defend it at if someone challenges you for it anytime, any day, you have to defend it right there and then. So we get these like really fun backstage segments and like vignettes that are filmed off site of people having matches in like all kinds of weird locations and like just crazy goofy stuff. Obviously hilarious. You've got a lot of like sexy stuff going on. You got a lot of skin. You got Sable with handprints on her boobies.
Oh boy.
This was the stuff my mom was always walking in the room for. Of course, Undertaker is crucifying people.
Sure.
After WrestleMania, we get introduced to the last member of the McMahon family to be introduced, which is Vince's innocent, friendly daughter, Stephanie McMahon.
Now, she's still around, like...
Until very recently, yes.
Okay.
So Stephanie gets introduced as an on-screen character after WrestleMania in '99. And, yeah, she's basically this, little innocent, friendly, sweet person initially.
Is she like an adult at this point?
She's like in her early... in real life, she had just graduated college.
Okay.
Basically. So she's probably like 23, 22,
24,
24, something like that. Yeah, and it's through all of this, Vince ends up being kicked out of the corporation. Shane merges the corporation with the ministry to form the corporate ministry. See, things are getting very
Oh, yeah.
convoluted.
Very.
Then you have a spin-off of the corporation where Vince McMahon's like briefly a babyface with like Mick Foley, and yeah, it's weird.
Oh, God. This sounds very messy.
So things are getting ready to go off the rails in a couple different ways. Of course, things are going off the rails creatively, and things are going to go off the rails behind the scenes as we're going to see a shakeup with the writing team.
Okay.
That is coming. We're going to see some big stars being shuffled around because of injury. But I hate to end the episode on a bummer, but I feel like this is a natural point to end the episode. I feel like we're riding really high. WWF has overtaken WCW in the ratings.
Yep.
They are winning the war for the first time in years.
Yep. It's
Things
got
are
to
good.
end at some
They are
point.
raking in the money.
Yeah.
Like, they have gone from the brink of going out of business to, like, 2 years later, raking in the money. I think up to this point, the most, like, 99 and 2000 are the most successful financial years they'd ever had up to this point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Business is just booming. It is mainstream, and not to end the show on a bummer, but we're going to. It kind of all comes crashing down to earth, and I don't mean that in a funny way. At Over the Edge 1999, and this is like probably it's certainly one of the most tragic things to ever happen in wrestling, and that's the death of Owen Hart.
Yes.
Yeah. So, are you familiar with Owen Hart's death at this event at all?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I thought it was earlier. The fact that it was 99, because I remember being very aware of that and seeing that. And I feel like I wasn't really watching wrestling at this point, so
Yeah.
I'm not sure. But yes, I do definitely remember this.
Yeah. So, for those who don't know, this took place on May 23rd, 1999. It was an event over the Edge, and it was at the Kemper Arena in Kansas City. Owen Hart, who was the younger brother of Bret, and as the only Hart who had stayed in the company after the Montreal Screwjob happened in 1997. At the time, he was doing a gimmick called the Blue Blazer, and the Blue Blazer was when he had first come to the WWF in the very late 80s. He was like a masked superhero gimmick.
Okay, yeah.
That he was doing. And this was kind of a comedy throwback to that. Like, he was like kind of parodying his old gimmick.
Uh-huh.
So it was kind of like a blundering superhero sort of comedy shtick he was doing.
Yeah. So
the idea was that he had done this on Sunday night. This is a kind of an altered version of it. This and Sting was doing this in WCW for years at this point, being lowered via harness from the rafters into the ring. And so basically, Owen Hart was supposed to do this as part of the Blue Blazer gimmick. Was supposed to be lowered from the rafters and get a couple feet above the ring and get tangled in the rope.
Yeah.
And then he had this quick release mechanism, which is essentially a carabiner.
Yeah.
That he is supposed to then release.
So he would fall
from,
like,
and then he takes a fall of a couple
8
feet
feet
and
or
it's
something.
Funny.
You know,
not even that. Just like he gets right above the ring and then gets tangled and falls.
Right. Because it's a comedy.
No worse than any fall a wrestler would take any other night.
Yeah.
And something happens. The equipment is not appropriate. And there's been all kinds of debate. I really don't think there's any debate anymore that this was handled appropriately by WWF at all.
It was or wasn't?
Was not.
Oh, okay.
So Owen Hart is, and I think I think it's perfectly emblematic of how we're just riding high and just doing all this shit and like nothing can knock us off the top of the world. And then this happens. He's supposed to be in an Intercontinental title match with the Godfather. Like he's dressed as a superhero with a cape and he's going in to fight a pimp. Like it's just like
the most ridiculous shit.
The most ridiculous shit. So he's supposed to perform this stunt where he is lowered from the rafters.
Yeah.
The mechanism fails, and while there is a video package, so at the time the the arena is darkened because they're showing a video package up on the big screen.
Mm-hmm.
So the people at home are seeing the video package, and in the arena the lights are down and the people are seeing the video package on the big screen.
Yeah.
During this, he falls. And he falls 78 feet into the ring from the top of the arena. And he lands chest first on the top rope and bounces back. And it throws him back into the ring. So when they come back from...
I honestly can't believe that it even threw him back in the ring.
Those ropes are very bouncy, and he hit super
hard.
I
know. I guess I just thought...
it threw him up into the air.
I guess that's what I was thinking, is it would have thrown him farther than the ring. But yeah, okay.
Yeah, so he falls, and he lands on the top rope. They come back from the video package, and they're not showing the ring. And they're kind of, you can tell they're kind of scrambling. They don't really know what's happening. And I think a lot of people in the arena thought it was part of the show at first.
Right,
because this is, there's weird, crazy shit happening all the time. Why wouldn't somebody just fall? So they are just shooting the crowd. And after a few minutes, Jim Ross, who's one of the commentators, comes on and starts talking to the audience and essentially just breaks kayfabe, as they say, to tell the home viewing audience that what had happened, that there had been an accident, and that it involved Owen Hart, and that this was not part of a wrestling angle, and that Owen Hart was hurt very badly. Yeah, essentially, repeatedly emphasizing this is not part of a wrestling storyline. This is a very serious situation. They do CPR on him in the ring.
Oh God!
They get him out. I think he was dead in the ring.
I was gonna say, I imagine.
Famously, Jeff Jarrett is in the back, and they don't know what's happening. Of course, Jeff Jarrett, who's one of Owen Hart's real life best friends and tag team partner in the story.
Yeah.
He's back there having to cut a promo right backstage, right outside the screen, and they roll Owen by on the stretcher, and there's a paramedic on top of him doing chest compressions, trying to get his heart started. So he is transported to Truman Medical Center in Kansas City, where they declared him dead. Though I think he was probably dead in the ring.
Yeah.
The cause of death was internal bleeding from blunt force trauma. The impact of him hitting the top rope severed his aorta.
Oh my God!
And he bled to death. Owen was 34 when this happened. Wow. It's one of the absolute worst things that has ever happened in wrestling.
Yeah.
It's horrific, and it's very negligent, and
yeah. Did they have any idea that this stuff was faulty, or was this just a freak accident? I know that how they handled it afterwards was not good, but
I think that I won't say Vince McMahon knew and let him go up there, but I think that the right checks weren't in place with the right people who knew what the hell they were doing in order to perform a stunt like that. And the equipment that he was using for that was not the kind of equipment that's appropriate for doing a stunt like that.
Okay.
They were using fucking backpacking equipment that I could go to Walmart and buy.
Yeah.
Not stuff I'm going to dangle over a ring 80 feet in the air.
Yeah. With. Not stuff that Sting had been using.
Right. He had done it a bunch.
And you trust that they know what they're doing.
Well, and that's the heartbreaking thing too, is Owen did not want to do it. He was terrified of heights. Was very adamant that he didn't want to do it, got talked into it, and then this happens. Of course, maybe not the most controversial thing, but one of the most controversial things is they decide to continue the show.
That's insane.
So if you watch the event, there's afterwards. So the event, of course, was never released in any form of home video. The first time it was publicly available was when the WWE Network launched in 2014. The event is available and they have all of the Owen Hart related stuff edited out with a thing at the beginning talking about what happened and why it's not in there.
Yeah.
You can still find obviously clips of some of the like Jim Ross announcing his death. Oh yeah, that's another thing. So they decide to continue the show. They have hauled him out, and they get Jim Ross on the headset, and Jerry Lawler I think knew.
Yeah.
You could kind of tell by looking at him. But Jim Ross famously tells the story that he's got what's his name in the headset, and they're like, "We want you to go on the air and give an update on Owen." And he's like, "Okay, well, what is the update?" And they said, "He's dead."
Oh,
and
Jesus.
You're live in 10, 9, 8, 7.
Oh my God.
So I mean, he he goes on the air like 10 seconds after he learns that he's dead to announce it to everyone that.
Jesus. But they didn't tell the people there, right?
They did not tell the people in the building that night. They found out after the show was over.
Oh, God.
And,
so they see him. Well, I mean, they see somebody fall in the darkness, but then of course they see everything. They see all the CPR and them hauling him off. So they knew he was injured.
They knew like he gets the.
But of course they probably couldn't see how far he'd fallen.
You want to know? You know how when an athlete gets hurt and they end up getting them off the field, everyone applauds.
Yes.
You know, like
it was like that.
Like he got that.
Yeah.
And it happens in wrestling too. If someone gets really hurt, you see them.
Yep.
Any sport, you know, that you applaud and they get up, and you don't want to see anyone get really hurt. And so I don't know that a lot of people knew how serious it was. They kept going with the show. There is literally a corner of the ring that for the rest of the event, if you'll pay attention, nobody goes to, because they told them don't go to that corner because the boards underneath are broken from where he hit so hard.
Oh my God.
Like, that's fucked up.
That's incredibly fucked up. This reminds me, by the way, of just last fall. Do you remember locally we had a football game between two local high schools?
Yeah.
And there was it's called the Musket Bowl, and it's a big thing, these rival schools. And they had some people, or maybe just this one man, skydiving in, and he fell out of the sky and landed on the track and died right then and there. And they continued and they did the game anyway. It was before the game had even started.
Yeah.
And they did the game anyway. And I remember being like, "You've got to be fucking kidding me."
Yeah. It's pretty fucked up.
High school football.
So obviously this is one of the most consequential things to happen in a WWF wrestling ring ever. The next night on Raw is of course a very famous episode. The show at the time is called Raw is War. They called this show Raw is Owen. That was a memorial show that consisted of basically all storylines on hold. And like only volunteers. Like if you wanted to wrestle a match, you could wrestle a match on the show.
I'm really surprised they did any wrestling at all.
Well, it was more of like, I'm going out there and wrestling for Owen, like as a tribute.
Yeah.
And combined with the pre-taped sit-downs with whoever wanted to talk about Owen. So they had a lot of like out of character interviews. If you want to see a bunch of like beefy, roidy guys cry, that's a good one to watch.
Oh Jesus!
They do the 10 bell salute at the beginning of the show. Stone Cold comes out at the end and toasts a beer to him.
Wow!
And, it's a tearjerker, as you can imagine.
Jeez.
And I hate to end the episode on such a bummer note, but we're gonna stop there for part 1 of the Attitude Era.
It's a somber ending.
It doesn't get any grimmer than that. So that's as grim as this story's gonna get, and that's pretty grim. I'll give you that.
It's pretty grim.
Grim.
So what can we look forward to then? Can we give the people something less grim to look forward to in part 2 of the Attitude Era?
So on less grim news, Stone Cold, he's out.
He's out?
The biggest guy in the company? Yeah, he's getting ready to go out.
Oh, shit.
Remember how he broke his neck? Yeah, that's kind of nagging him still.
Oh, boy.
Vince Russo, the guy who has been
the
weird spearhead head writer, he's out. He's going to go to WCW.
Oh, boy.
And take his partner with him. We're going to get new people. We're going to get Kurt Angle. We're going to get world champion Triple H. We're gonna get the Undertaker deciding. I like the satanic stuff, but you know what I really like? Motorcycles. You're gonna get a group of guys who are gonna be huge in the coming years, jump ship from WCW, and come over and start to make their name in WWF. And then we're gonna talk about the end of the Monday Night War and the demise of ECW and as well as WCW.
Yeah.
And
because if they're out by 2001, there's only one left reigning.
Yep, the Attitude Era ends with one company on top, and you already know what company that is.
It's true.
So we're gonna explore the final downfall of WCW a little bit, and talk about the WWF taking over as the monopolistic wrestling company in America, at least for the next 20 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Well, that's what we have to look forward to then in our second part.
Indeed.
Well, I've learned quite a bit. And
I hope so.
And also have remembered quite a bit from this time as well. So that
I'm glad.
Deeply buried in my mind.
So here's, man, when I think about like 1997, 98, the first things that pop into my mind, WWF Attitude Era, South Park, TRL, just what a time.
For me, it's Spice Girls.
Exactly. Well, yeah, same. I mean, it's that same era. I think when I think of TRL, I think of Spice Girls, and Britney Spears, and boy bands, and
absolutely. I was 10 years old.
We didn't know what we had.
We sure didn't.
Nope.
Oh God, I miss it. Well, on that note, thank you so much for listening to episode 59. Thank you. You can listen to, of course, all 58 of our previous episodes wherever you found this one, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just, wherever you get your podcasts.
That's true.
It is true. You can also find us on social media on Instagram and Twitter at Cool Kids Club Pod. Also, if you check us out over on Facebook, you can just search for Cool Kids Club Podcast.
Now, are you doing Threads?
I have not even looked into Threads, whatever it's called.
Threads, yeah.
Threads. Yeah,
we are currently not, as a podcast,
on Threads.
No, because I don't know how. But
because we are old and out of touch.
Well, I have a personal one set up that I figured I'll try that. I'll see what it's like. Okay. But I haven't figured out how to get the podcast up there yet. So we'll see. Okay.
Well, hey, you might get the podcast on Threads. Stay tuned for that.
Maybe. We'll see.
Personally, on Instagram, you can find me at Amy Reads TN. Justin, where can the good people find you?
Well, they can find me at Lousy with Ghosts on Instagram.
Yes.
Also want to thank Brian Hey Guys Wakefield for all his wonderful contributions to humanity, medical, musical, and otherwise. Thank
medical
you for
and musical contributions, and just general. He's just a great guy.
Friend to all.
Friend to all
creatures, big and small.
That's right.
Brian Wakefield. BrianWakefieldMusic.com. Check out everything he's doing.
Yes.
And
a special thank you to my cat Hazel, who has spent much of this episode wrapped in my arm beside of me.
And a shout out to my cat Cosmo, who for the first half was curled up right next to me. Till I got too excited about Kane or whatever.
We got some good cats.
Yeah.
We got some good little babies, huh? She doesn't care. All right, guys. Well, until next time, I would suggest... What could we suggest? Like, suck it?
I was gonna say suck it.
I would suggest you suck it.
I would suggest you suck it. Break it down.